Every reporter writes his own obituary. And mine is going to say, the life reporter who obtained the infamous Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination. There were other photographs taken of the motorcade. Abe Zapruder got it from beginning to end, and he was the only one. He expressed embarrassment the day we were negotiating that it was him, this middle-aged garment manufacturer, who got the only filmed evidence of the assassination, and not one of those world-famous photographers back there in the press bus. He never quite got over that.
This is Walter Cronkite in our newsroom, and there has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy.
On November 22nd, 1963, I was in my office, saw the bulletins spitting out on AP,
From Dallas, Texas,
bells ringing. It was astonishing.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
When I first reached Abraham Zapruder, I had no idea who he was, except somebody who'd had an 8mm camera in Dealey Plaza. I picked up the phone book and just literally ran my finger down the Z's, and it jumped out at me. I started calling that number every 15 minutes, as a matter of fact. At 11 o'clock, this weary voice answered. Mr. Zapruder had been contacted, as I knew he would be, by other reporters, and he'd asked them to come to his office at 9, and I got there at 8. He looked up when I walked in. He looked slightly annoyed, but he said, you might as well come in. I'm about to show the film to 2 Secret Service agents. So the 3 of us went into this tiny whitewashed room, and this old rickety 8mm projector. He turned to us and he said, "Are you ready?" The answer is there was no way in the world that anybody in that room could be ready for what was about to happen. Turned it on, and there was that familiar sequence of the motorcade coming around the corner, then turning abruptly left. Then the presidential limousine disappears behind that huge road sign. When it comes out, the president has both of his fists jammed up underneath his chin. That was a signal that he had been hit by the first bullet to hit him, the second shot. And suddenly, we get to what we now know is the infamous frame 313, where the whole top of the president's head just explodes up into the air. When that happened, the 3 of us, 2 grizzled agents and this not-so-grizzled reporter, all reacted with, "Ugh." It was as if we had been simultaneously gut-punched. I've seen that film now perhaps 100 times in my life. The impact, remarkably, has never diminished. That moment, in all my years in journalism, was probably the most dramatic I've ever encountered. Once I saw that film, I thought, there is no way in hell that Life magazine is not going to wind up with that film. And the one thing that he constantly repeated was, He said, I do not want this film to be exploited. I assured him that Life magazine would not exploit the film. I mean, I knew the reputation of Life, and that seemed to comfort him. Meanwhile, out in the hall, the other reporters were behaving very badly. They were shouting, they were banging on the door. Zapruder himself was getting increasingly upset. I think the negotiation made him uncomfortable. And I finally got to $50,000, and I said, if we have to go any higher than that, I'm going to have to call New York. He looked up at me and he said, let's do it. So I sat down at his typewriter. I typed out a 9-line contract, and I walked out the back door with what turned out to be the most famous home movie in American history. That week's issue of Life was already on press when the president was shot. They made black and white copies because it was too late to do color at that point. Out of deference to the grieving Kennedy family, they did not publish the headshot, frame 313. Life later published that particular frame, but not on this first issue. In many ways, it's ironic that Life magazine got this film and therefore had to show it for the first time to the world in still pictures. I often talk about the majesty of the still picture, of the still image. There's no question in my mind that the Zapruder film would never have had the impact it does if it had been shown the first time as a motion picture. The fact is, we showed it in still images, and those cemented themselves onto the American psyche. When you're a reporter, you have to make decisions often on whether to push something very hard and heartlessly often, or when not to. Abe Zapruder was haunted by the fact that he shot that film for the rest of his life. And in many ways, the same is true of me.